Choosing a franchise isn't just about the business model, it's about you. Dr. Rebecca Monet's work proves success starts with self awareness. When your values, strengths, and culture align with the brand, performance skyrockets. This is the science of franchise fit. Hello, I'm Scott Elliott. I'm bringing another segment of Ownership Essentials where I share practical insights for successful business ownership. And today I am absolutely thrilled to be here with Rebecca Monet. She's the CEO and Chief Scientist at Zorakle Profiles. Now, Rebecca is a bit of a legend in the franchise industry. She's pioneered the application of behavioral sciences and organizational psychology to show franchisee franchisor compatibility and to help predict performance. Her work gives both potential business owners and franchisors greater confidence in their decisions. Rebecca, welcome to this segment today.
Oh, Scott, I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
I'm going to have fun too. I love it. Well, let's just start out with a softball here. For someone hearing about Zorakle for the first time, what exactly is it? What's the and I really want to talk a little bit about what's the science that sits behind the assessments, because I know it's a lot more than just another personality quiz, right? So help us with that, please.
That's correct. So, Zorakle Profiles is an assessment tool that is used to help facilitate a right fit between a prospective franchisee and a franchisor. And it is based on a meta-analysis approach. In other words, we use several different sciences to get a deeper, more meaningful understanding of a prospective franchisee. So instead of just using a personality test, which by the way has less than a 3% correlation to how successful someone's going to be, we use seven different sciences that come from several different constructs, researchers, universities, psychologists, including a sports psychologist.
Okay. Wow. That's great. Are these sciences, are these things people would know or be familiar with if they've done anything in the past with, organizational psychology, or are these pretty, you
Yeah,
know, oh,
yeah.
oh,
So one of the sciences, Scott, comes from Stanford Research Institute, and
okay.
it's a science around the values, motives, the drivers behind what somebody is doing. All their decisions are based on their values, how they're going to spend the time, money, and energy. So that work comes out of Stanford Research Institute. One of the sciences comes from Neil Churchill's work. It's called the stages of growth, where we look at a franchisor to determine where they are in that evolution. Obviously, a franchisee that fits in an early stage franchise system is different than a franchisee when that franchisor has thousands of units. So we want to make sure a prospective franchisee is in the right stage of growth. And then one of the other sciences is around culture. Sometimes fit is simply we don't fit within that franchisor's culture. So we define that franchisor's culture, and of course, we want to know if a prospective franchisee fits there. That work comes out of the University of Michigan. And then we do look at personality, even though it's not a strong indicator of performance. It is good for consultants to know and franchisors to know because it helps with how to communicate with an individual, how to avoid conflict, how much detail we need to give our prospective franchisee. And honestly, if we're going to get along with them, right? Some personalities we just don't jive with, right?
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
We also look at core competencies, which that work comes out of Gallup research, and we assess a prospective franchisee in the eight kind of core competencies like sales, marketing, things like even finance and ops and technical skills. And then the final two are a piece of sports psychology, which is Dr. Robert Nedford's work. This is about the ability of someone to focus and how much pressure they can take and where they're possibly going to make mistakes if there's too much pressure. And finally, emotional and social intelligence. So that's more about how I manage myself as a business owner. So it's about self control, self motivation, things like that. And then social intelligence is about how I'm going to manage my employees, my relationships with my clients, my relationship with my franchisor, right? So it's things like conflict management, team building, leadership, influence, those kinds of markers that we'd be looking. So it's quite comprehensive, as you can kind of tell.
Yeah, no, I think it's wonderful how you've brought all of these various lenses together to get a nice, complete, profile that really helps to enhance not only the franchisees, potential franchisees' view of how they approach this new adventure of starting a business, but also the franchisors. Make sure they get somebody who's optimized for success, right? So beautiful. Now, talk a little bit, please, about how widely used is Zoracle today? Maybe whether it's number of assessments taken, number of franchisors who use it. Like, what do we know about the impact Zoracle is having in the world of franchising today?
I've been doing this 32 years, Scott. And 32 years ago, when I suggested franchisors use a meta-analysis psychographic assessment, I got a lot of pushback. And the pushback was, hey, if they can fog up a mirror, and if we have territory, and if they have money, any monkey can do this business. So I got a lot of pushback in the early days. Today, and when franchisors would come to us, it would be when they were in trouble. There's some litigation issue going on, there's retention issue going on, franchisees aren't performing. That would be pretty much when they would come to me. Today, we have hundreds of franchisors using the system, and they're coming earlier and earlier and earlier. Many franchisors, uh, before they have even the first franchisees, are creating their algorithm for what the ideal franchisee based on their business model, what they're bringing to the table, what that franchisee needs to be able to do. So we have hundreds of franchisors on the system.
No, that's great. And it's a common language. Honestly, when I meet with franchisors, I have yet to talk to one who isn't aware or doesn't leverage the Zoracle profile in some way. It's created a language for us to describe, the markers for success. So I think that's great work you've done. The things that people prioritize often shifts after major life changes or major career changes. How does identifying core values really guide candidates toward a franchise that stays meaningful for them over time?
That's a great question because we do evolve and change and go through phases of our lives. And our values is the clearest indication of who we are in that moment. The values that we possess at 18 is different than, then it's about socializing, find a girlfriend, find a boyfriend, maybe get married, go to college is a whole different set of values. At 38, you got a couple of babies, you're building an empire, you're doing everything possible to grow yourself. So our values do evolve and change. Um, and here's what's really weird. Values are largely unconscious. It's hard for us to even articulate it. So by being able to articulate it through an assessment similar to ours, now our brokers and our franchisors and even the prospective franchisee get a better idea. Why do I do this? And why do I do that? And why is it I'm spending my time this way? And how is it I'm attracted to this thing and not attracted to that thing? So the more we know about our values, which really is the only true predictor of future performance, the better we're going to be at finding the right franchise.
Nice. No, and that level of self-awareness and self-knowledge, like you said, it's hard to articulate even, right? It's even when you try to think about it. So I think again that the tool that you've provided really helps us create a language around that and understand it. So yeah, I appreciate when I took my first Zoracle. I've taken it twice. Once when somebody sent it to me, and once after I started using it. Remarkably similar outcomes. So they stood the test
Yeah.
of time in the like 2-3 months between, but it was really, yeah, it helped me to have some nice conversations with my wife about who I am. So that's good.
Yeah. I bet she knows you better than you know yourself.
She does. Yeah, we've been doing marriage about as long as you've been doing Zoracle profiles. So it's
Yeah.
good. So yes, it's good.
Bravo.
So yes, thank
Bravo.
you. Um, let's talk a little bit about the stage of growth science in the assessment. You know, some owners, as you'd mentioned, thrive in these fast moving young brands, right? Others prefer stability. They prefer established systems. Why does knowing your own comfort level with the growth stage make such a difference in where you land and what you pick for your ownership journey?
Again, so important, Scott, and oftentimes something that we don't think about when we're going to look for a business. But stage of growth measures things like the organizational structure of a franchise organization. It looks at the leadership style of that franchise organization. It looks at the initiatives, the goals, what they're focusing on at that time. It looks at things like how involved the concept originator is, because the less involved they become, things begin to change.
Oh,
But
that's a
we
good point.
also,
Hmm.
isn't that amazing how that
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of happens? And then we also look at what Neil Churchill called crises. They're growing pains, basically, is what it is. So, as a franchisor or any business evolves, there are predictable crises or challenges they're going to incur. And depending on how they navigate those crises, will take them to the next stage of growth. So a franchise candidate needs to know, where am I the best fit? And am I able to go through those growing pains and those crises and grow with that franchisor? You know, for example, I myself fit into what we call stage one or stage two franchise system. I like chaos. I like things dynamic. I don't want to be told what to do. I want to create things myself, right? I'm innovative. So I really like that. And I also want to have influence on policy and procedure. I want to influence who I'm working with, my franchisor. Others are going, no, 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 that's crazy. I want something, as you pointed out, more established, more systematic, more proven. I need additional support. I need additional training. I need marketing support. And so once you kind of know that, you go, okay, I'm going to avoid this and I'm going to go here. Um, where I'm comfortable is not where you're going to be comfortable, and it's not where your candidate is going to be comfortable. So knowing it really does help our candidates know what to pick, and also our franchisor to see this candidate is going to need things that we're not there yet, and make sure that they're doing right by that franchisee.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I love how this stage of growth consideration helps people think through the long term implications, right? Because
Mhm.
you may join with a franchise system. Maybe you're an entrepreneur yourself and you're an entrepreneurial stage of growth, but that that franchise likely is going to outgrow the entrepreneurial stage, right? They're going to sell into the larger partner level or the plug and play level, and it could be over time you could really start to think about I may need an exit strategy for selling or whatever, right? As far as when I outgrow or when this outgrows what I like is, I mean, have you found that to be
Oh my gosh,
a
such a good
guiding principle? Yeah.
Such a good point, Scott, because if I am more entrepreneurial, I think more like a partner, and all of a sudden the franchisor goes to a stage three plug and play or a stage four empire, I might get bored as a candidate, as a franchisee. I might say, you know what, there's new management, there's new initiatives, and the brand is taking a new direction. Private equity has come in. So we have to think through that and say, what is my exit strategy? I may no longer be a right fit for that franchisor and vice versa. But by knowing this, we can make great decisions and plan for that exit and ramp up as quickly as possible so we get the biggest bang for the buck when we do choose to sell our businesses.
Yeah, yeah, no, fantastic work on stage of growth. Thank you for those pieces. Let's move to culture, right? Each franchise system has its unique way of operating. Some of those highly structured, some more independent, and the way they work with their franchisees, that interaction will be different. Talk a little bit, please, about the cultural alignment and how that alignment influences like the day-to-day experience of a franchisee and maybe their long-term satisfaction.
So I culture always feels like one of those soft things that people try to define. But culture is a combination of the values of the organization. And of course, we want to make sure we're aligned with the values, but it's also the best practices, the environment, philosophies that that franchisor has. And so all systems will be built around these philosophies, around these values. Best practices will be built around it. So if you're not a good fit within a certain culture, and I don't know about you, Scott, but I've personally experienced that one time when I was just not a good fit. I was miserable. They were miserable with me.
Can't imagine, Rebecca. Can't imagine that.
Somebody not
I
loving me,
know.
right?
How about that? Yeah.
So, um, this culture piece is so important. What we see is when someone's not in alignment, as you pointed out, with that franchisor's culture, that individual finds it much more difficult to embrace the systems and process. They're not buying in to the best practices. It just doesn't line up with who they are. And we know part of franchising is the best practices you're going to get. And if you don't line up with it, you don't agree with it, you're going to be like a salmon going upstream. You're just going to be uncomfortable, right? And you're likely not going to grow as quickly as you want. So culture is super important for you to understand when you're selecting a franchise, and also know yourself, as you pointed out. Really know yourself and where you're going to be most comfortable.
Yeah, no, that really is, it's an eye-opening consideration because, like you said, many times when people think franchising, they think the playbook, right? You think, okay, I'm buying the systems and playbook, and like when you mentioned when you first started out, even the franchisors were like, no, any monkey can do it because if we have a playbook, but really, culture is so important, right?
Mm-hmm.
If boy, it could lead to a lifetime of misery or
Misery,
many
yes.
years of misery, yeah, without the right fit with culture. And on the positive side, when you find a culture that's a glove fit for your own values and culture, what a rewarding experience, right? Just to land in a place where the way you work and the way what puts you into a flow is how your business partner works too. So
Yeah.
yeah, very good.
I like your
Oh,
analogy of hand in glove because that's really, it's like your home. You just sort of know this
mhm.
is where you belong.
Yeah, yeah. I came up with that analogy all by myself. I should write that down.
You're brilliant.
Hand in
I mean,
glove.
you're absolutely brilliant, Scott.
That's right. Look at that. Go figure. You came up with Zorakle. I came up with hand in glove. So it's good. Um, all right. So let's talk a little bit about work style, right? People have all these differences in how we plan, how we make decisions, how we organize our work. How does clarity around our personal work style, how does that point candidates to the environments where they're going to perform best?
So, work style is the only part of the assessment that is a personality style. Um, Work style gives us a lot of information around the pace at which we're going to work, the pace at which we're going to make decisions. It gives us information about, am I more kind of data driven, project driven, task driven, or am I more someone that enjoys working with people, whether that's on a customer service side or sales or marketing side. So it gives us a lot of information about the speed and the amount of diversity that that client is going to need, or that franchisee is going to need in the business. It's also going to give us a lot of information about their daily structure. Some of us prefer routine, right? Working with the same type of projects, the same type of clients, and having a very structured day to day. Others want to work with a diverse amount of projects and clients, and they like customizing things. So, understanding your work style will let you know, are you going to be a good manager?
Hmm, hmm.
Who are you going to get along with best? And also in the selecting of a business, this one is too structured, I'm going to feel trapped, or this one's too loosey-goosey, and I'm going to feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to be like wandering around looking for something shiny, right? So it kind of uh, locks us into better understanding where uh, people, versus projects, kind of big picture versus small picture, speed at which we're going to work. So we always want to know the personality style. We just don't want to use it exclusively because there's not as much correlation to performance.
No, I appreciate that. That it's a consideration, but like you said, it's not maybe necessarily the key marker to success. But
Mhm.
just as I've been doing this work, and I see, franchisors that have very similar concepts, maybe same industry, and yet how they've designed their playbook, some want a very strong salesperson and they have back end
Mhm.
operations that handle a lot of the detail work, whatever that may be, or vice versa. Maybe they have the call center that books the appointments and they need an operator to be really good at the detail work of the business, or whatever it might be. So yeah, I do appreciate that giving attention to the type of work a person is naturally suited for, and finding a franchise that maximizes that, right? That really
Yeah.
leverages those strengths and that work style. So that's good.
That's a really good example. And one of the reasons, by knowing your own personality or work style, you can find a franchise system that complements those areas where you're weak and leverages those areas that you love doing and that you're naturally good at. Like you said, whether I'm great at sales and marketing or I'm great at managing people, those are different individuals.
And I admit I probably crossed the line into the competencies part, right, between work style and competencies. Let's talk a little bit about the competencies that are assessed in the Zorakle profile, right? We all have those natural competencies that stand out. Maybe it's leadership, right? Maybe there's relationship building, maybe it's problem solving or customer support. Um, why is it important for owners to understand their strongest competencies before committing to a franchise?
So the Zoracle tool evaluates 8 what I call hard competencies or skills. We use the work of Gallup research, which is the strengths finders. So we're actually assessing the strengths of that individual. And then when they get their feedback, it's highest and best use of those strengths. So you're going to find out of these 8 competencies: leadership, sales, marketing, ops, finance, technical, customer service, all of those kinds of things, where you should be spending your time, where your strengths really are. So again, you're applying them in a way that makes sense to grow a business. If this business requires strong sales and marketing skills, and you're not particularly good at that, even if you're attracted to it and think it's a cool business and there's great territory, that may not be the right business for you. So by knowing highest and best use of your strengths, you're going to make a better decision in terms of what business you should select.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been a huge fan of the Gallup strengths work for many years, and because it makes so much sense, right? It just makes so much sense. It's not, we've all often been told, here are the areas you're weak, shore those up. No, no, no. You want to get more done, let's focus on where your strengths are, and shore
Yeah.
up your weaknesses with support and help, right? Yeah.
And it's interesting because Gallup research with the strength finder was first that kind of boldly stated that, as you know,
Yeah.
where others are, oh, here's weakness, let's take a class or let's coach you or mentor you.
Yeah.
Clifton, when he created the Strength Finder, is saying, why? Why not just leverage what they're fabulous at rather than forcing them to get better at it? But in franchising, once I know what my strengths are, then as you pointed out, I'm looking for a franchisor that does shore up those areas that I'm not so good at and not good use of my time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and just spending less time doing the miserable work and more time doing the fun work, that's just a better way to a fulfilling life too. Right? So it's good.
Amen. Amen to that.
Yes. Amen. Um, let's talk about the sales skills. We think about the evaluation of how people sell, and not everybody is naturally suited to sales, but I've been in sales, professional sales for a long time, and came to the conclusion a long time ago, everybody's in sales. I mean, if you're trying to get your kids to do something, you're in sales, right? I mean, everybody's in sales. We just approach it differently. But let's talk for a little bit about taking an honest look at an owner or potential owner's sales abilities. How does that shape the franchise they choose and the kind of support they should be looking for when selecting a franchise to invest in?
So, bottom line, as you pointed out, no matter what business we're growing, it requires sales one way or another. Maybe it's just convincing an employee to have higher production, or it's really getting the signature on that contract. We're all in some type of sales. But after doing this for a long, long time, I realized there are different types of sales, right? And so we wanted to be able to measure if this franchisor has to do sales. Is it more rah rah ree, what I got to get my folks to produce, or is it I'm cold calling? What am I doing, right? So we've broken it down into three primary categories. Um, so the first is what we call a consultative sale. And that is someone who has high credibility, high authority, is able to dig into a client's issues and challenges and goals that they have, and they're able to educate, advise, even act as an advocate in some cases to come up with some custom solution for that. Typically, that kind of sale is more long term. It'll happen over weeks or maybe even months. And that's a very specific type of person. If you have very little patience, that might not be
Mm-hmm. It's not for
ideal
you.
for you, right? Or you're not good at follow up, that might not be the best kind of sale for you. And then we have what we call the relational sales person that is really good at building rapport and connecting with individuals and enjoys working with that same customer again and again and again. So that could be a nail salon, it could be a massage place, it could be a stockbroker. It's someone that builds that relationship over time. It may initially start with friends and families or church members, and then that group of relationships will continue to expand. But we always want to think about relational sales. It's more about that repeat customer. So if you're not particularly great at hunting, right, and you're more of a gatherer, this would be kind of what this would be. You're going to be looking for a business where you're going to have that same customer. You're going to find them once, you're going to take great care of them, and they're going to buy more and more of your services. And then the final one is what we call the competitive sale. This is typically more transactional. It'll be oftentimes a higher ticket. It requires more assertiveness. It requires more initiative. Oftentimes includes a bit of cold calling. And because it is more transactional, this has to be someone that's really good at closing, right? So that's kind of the divide that we have. And knowing where you're best at, again, is going to help you pick what the right franchise is for you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's great. I mean, there's so many different, frameworks and models for how to define selling skills. I can't tell you how many sales books I've read through the years or been trained on, but I do like the simplicity. It's that, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive list, right? Between the consultative, you got the relational, you've got that competitive or transactional, and that really covers all the types of formats.
Mhm.
Simple, but very helpful, right, in deciding, is this the right
Yeah.
franchise fit for me? So thank you for that. Now let's get down to sort of as we wind down the details in the Zorakle profile, the needs and wants. Right, everybody pursues ownership for a very specific set of needs and wants that are pretty unique to them, often based on their values. Right, they have personal, professional priorities, and if they ignore those, they're going to regret it later. Right. So, why do you think it's valuable for candidates to be really clear, not only in what they think they want in a business, but also about their personal needs and wants before they sign on with a brand? Maybe it's killing it and it's growing fast and it's highly profitable. Uh, Talk a little bit about that, the importance of that final piece.
Such an important topic. This is that self-reflection. piece, right? Where we really do have to know who we are and what's going to make us happy and profitable and grow. Knowing our needs and wants will narrow down the options of the franchises. We have seen patterns, Scott. We've run hundreds of thousands of assessments and we see patterns based on the values that you mentioned, where certain sets of values that someone lives their life by will have certain types of needs and wants. So I'll give you an example. There's a set of values that we call the societal. This is someone that is, you're a society, I'm a
I
societal.
am.
So we're about
Look at that.
making a difference.
Mhm.
We're about gathering wisdom and knowledge and helping others, right? We want to have direct impact on the lives and businesses of others. We're about justice and fairness and harmony and all those beautiful things. We want to save the world, right? So, based on that, and I'm selecting a franchise, I'm going to be looking for my need, my want, your need, your want would be to look for cause based or purpose driven business. Societals also tend to work better with highly skilled employees, even partners. So that we're going to look for businesses where they can work with engineers and doctors and graphic designers. They're not likely going to work in a business where there's a lot of turnover, right? Or they're young uh, employees. So we kind of know those needs and wants. And because they have a desire to have influence, it's both on their prospective franchisee and their clients, but it's also going to be on the franchisor. So it has to be something where they can volunteer to be on a committee, you know, a marketing committee, an advisory committee, or something of that nature. So we need to know what that is. A client needs to know what their needs and wants are and who they're going to work with best. So the tool helps define that. And then, of course, consultants like yourself help refine it even further to get to very specific criteria.
Mhm. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. Uh, the idea of just clearly identifying needs and wants, based on our set of values, that's something that, I love helping people. As you mentioned, the societal in me, I love helping people. But your assessment tool really arms me to help people. It's a great shortcut. Yeah, it might take me months or years to get to know somebody well enough to really understand their wants and needs, and yet with them taking this 15-minute assessment, and I have yet to have somebody say, wow, that assessment was way off the mark, right? So far everybody has, they've seen themselves, they've seen a reflection of themselves in the assessment, which is great. Now I think I would like to wrap up though, talking about assessments in general, right? No assessment can perfectly capture every detail of a person, right? It's likely that somebody, even though they see a reflection of themselves in the assessment, will say, well, I'm not sure about this piece or that piece. Why do you think even partial clarity or a majority of clarity is powerful? Why is it better for them to have some insight into their strengths and their values and their culture fit rather than just to try to go with their gut or go in blind?
Yeah. So the good news with a meta-analysis approach, we're not just looking at personality, we're not just looking at core competences. We're able to get deeper, kind of like a medical doctor. If you come in with certain symptoms, then that doctor is going to run a set of, blood chemistry, x-rays, ultrasound, whatever he or she is going to do. And then they're going to look at all of that data and get a clear picture of what's going on and then prescribe a way to get past those symptoms. This is similar in that it gives a very 360 of that client. And kind of backtracking a little bit what we talked about earlier is most of us aren't that self-reflective. We may not even know about some of our strengths. We may not even know we're really good at this. We may not know why we loved that job and hated that job. They may not be able to articulate it. So many of us just don't have that self-reflection, where this tool kind of slaps it right in your face and says, here's who you really are, 360. And so it's rare someone says, that's not me. But if they do, it's usually a part or parts of themselves that they haven't recognized yet. Their wives will know, their husbands will know, their best friends will know, but they themselves may not know uh, because they haven't taken a deep look at themselves, you know?
No, thanks for sharing that. I mean, so many thank yous to you, Rebecca. I mean, the work you've done over the last, few decades, putting this together, continually honing it, right? You've got this great, scientific spirit of improvement. I always love hearing you talk about the next things you're implementing and the new things you're trying to build in to continually make this a better and better, more effective tool, in spite of it being a great success right now. I mean, it must feel good to be playing such an important role in helping people. Like every person who's taken this profile and avoided a bad business or picked a
Oh my.
good business. I mean, that's got to feel good for you.
Yeah.
And you helped with that.
It's so fulfilling, especially when we do the research later and we see this candidate that was a 92% fit ramped up faster than this other candidate that wasn't quite as a good fit. And they retain longer when it's a good fit. Um, they tend to embrace systems better. They comply better, right? So there's, and of course, perform better. That's what I'm really interested in. I want them to be successful so they can provide for their families and impact their communities. So it's very, very rewarding to help people avoid mistakes and point them in the right direction, what's going to be best and right for them.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for all you do and you continue to do. I'm a big fan of the tool, of you, and it's a core part of my process. I don't strong arm anybody if they're like, I've taken a million assessments, I'm not going to take another one. I'll work with them, but boy, it really helps me if we can get that snapshot of that assessment and at least have a dialogue, like a 20-minute conversation where we review their profile
Mhm.
and they can either confirm, or if they say no, that's not me at all. I haven't had that happen yet, but if they did, I'd at least have a shortcut to knowing how best to help them. So
Yeah.
again, thank you. Thanks for all of your answers today. You gave us a nice overview of the tool. And in the link that I'm going to put into the content of this post, I'm going to have a link so people can take their assessment, so they can see and just get that free report. Takes, what is it, 15 minutes? What's the average time
15
it
minutes,
takes?
unless you're an
15
overthinker.
minutes. Oh, well, yeah, that's why it took me 20 minutes. Okay, makes sense. But by and large, 15 minutes. I think it's great. Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks for everything today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Scott.